welcome to you. Welcome to anybody else that's listening to our discussion today. Just a reminder to our listeners is we currently discussing a series around applying unconventional wisdom for a joyful life. I have selected principle number 9 for our conversation today, and this principle is really uh, all experiences are opportunities for growth. So it doesn't really matter what we go through, what our situations are, they're all opportunities for growth. And that's why I said to Shanaz, let's see whether we can really test this principle against a wider range of situations, perhaps. But I'm going to give a brief summary, and I want to hear your thoughts, Shanaz, in terms of what you feel about any of this. So, um, the background to this principle really is outlined as follows. It says that a challenge can bring out the best in people by helping them grow. And the process then that needs to be adopted to really grow consciously is number one is to really face the challenge. Face the challenge head on. Don't run away from it. Don't turn your back on it. Turn around, face it, deal with it. As part and parcel of this, number two would be is move out of your comfort zone. And it's an interesting thing is for me the phrase that describes comfort zone is really a place of familiarity, because it's not always the cushiness of a situation that we find ourselves in, or a system that we used to, whatever. But sometimes we're just familiar with a discomforting place, which we literally would include as a comfort zone. So even in this case, is I've heard this phrase that's coined that rather the devil you know than the devil you don't. So even knowing a particular inverted commas devil is part and parcel of your comfort zone, because it's your place of familiarity. There's no real surprises, whether it's destructive things, whether these things are constructively affecting you. It is what we would describe as your comfort zone. So, number two is to move out of your comfort zone after turning around and facing your challenge. Number three would be break through the barriers holding you back from what you want. And what are these barriers? Now, in many different ways, we actually touch on these things. But, two classes, external barriers. If those are the things they're holding you back from what you want, and typical things. It's not an exhaustive list. Just typical things that seem to basically occupy everyone. Things that we need to think about is money, top of the list. Do I have a budget? Secondly, the all-time favorite, time. Time. So we regard that as an external barrier. And then, of course, people. People are people, and therefore relationships and so on. The internal barriers, some of them, generally speaking, is fear of the unknown. There's always that fear of failure, other limiting beliefs, and then the good old favorite inner critic that tells you, that inner voice that tells you that you are not good enough. So, to recap, number one, face your challenge. Number two, move out of your comfort zone. Number three, break through barriers holding you back from what you want. Now, the application of this principle that all experiences are opportunities for growth. So, if we use it just very loosely and not really in depth as far as relationships are concerned, and let's talk about it in the context of dealing with conflict. Now, usually it's common for both parties in that situation to blame the other person and defend themselves. So, if that's the typical behavior, but if the principle is to be applied, that all experiences are opportunities for growth, you got to reframe the situation into asking, how can I grow from this challenging experience? And so when you do this and you ask this, you begin to look for something constructive from your experience. You don't judge the experience as either good or bad or sad. It's just an experience, right? So the reframe then has new meaning, it takes on new purpose. And so, you seek the silver lining. I'm a strong believer in this. It's a faith walk, is that if you seek it, you shall find it. So whatever you seek, you shall find. And remember, we're talking about living your life joyfully. So that means by applying this principle, you can have joy in every situation. That all your experiences are really opportunities for growth. And that opportunity, the silver lining that you're looking for, is how in this relationship dynamic can both parties benefit from this situation. Whatever brought the conflict to bear, it is where does the silver lining exist. So if you can't see it, remember, it's really actively pursuing the silver line. So you look for it, and I promise you, we sometimes find easier if we're looking for warts in the other person. I guarantee you, you shall find it. To some degree, an analogy that goes with this, that's maybe beyond relationship, but is more general in life, is when I think about riding a bike. And I don't mean a bicycle. You can, but a motorbike, it seems it's more exhilarating and also far more dangerous, of course. And yes, I ride a bike. It is the aspect of bend management. Now, when you're riding a bike and you're approaching a bend, um, typically what you would expect is that you got to be careful of a bend, especially when the bend is quite tight, or it could even be a hairpin bend. And what we tend to do is we look at that bend, and two things happen. Automatically, we begin to slow down. All right, so progress is stunted. Secondly, if we don't slow down quick enough, because we are looking at the bend, the highest probability is you will hit the bend. And so all bikers, experienced bikers know this, is that you never look at the thing you are trying to avoid. You rather look at that point, that location beyond the bend. You fix your eye on some place in your mind's eye, right? Um, that already imagines that you've moved past the bend. So the number one is that you see the bend, but you look beyond the bend and you look at the progress you're going to make beyond the bend. So it's the same thing in relationships with people. If you're going to look for the fault in the other person, 100% probability is you're going to find the fault in the other person. So rather look for those things in another person that are positive, because what happens is that on any stretch of road, they're not just bends. There are straight roads. There's many other things besides the bend in the road that exist. And so the challenge or the encouragement is to look for those things that are far more constructive. So, you might say to me, but Jacques, this particular person just continually pushes my buttons. So if you reframe that they're continually pushing your buttons, because guess what? It's an opportunity for growth, right? Is to thank the other person that they have revealed the button that you can be pushed. Because the adage is, if your button is pushed, it's because you have them. It's not the other. It's not in the hands of the other person. And so this is the opportunity for you to work on a button. What is that button? That trigger to behave in a certain way. Normally, that the trigger that causes you to attack or defend yourself with the other person. So I just want to end off this particular talk before we have a discussion around these things. Is Bruce D. Schneider says or asks this question: are your painful experiences stumbling blocks or stepping stones? And so that question is really a powerful one as far as I'm concerned, because it seems to me like you have a choice, to either see your experience as a massive barrier in your way, or you see that experience, whatever it is, as a stepping stone towards living a life that you want. All right. So I am done, Shanaz. What are your thoughts, comments? And I really would like you to contextualize it in the way that we spoke about earlier, if you can.
Hi. Yes, oh my word, even as you were finishing that are your painful experiences a stumbling block or a stepping stone, I was reminded about a conversation that I had with someone who had been in a damaging relationship for many years and had told me that she felt that it was a waste of time, that she had wasted. She deeply regretted and she felt that her years had been wasted. And I was kind of listening to this, and I said to her, doesn't she think that it's her perception that it was wasted? Because when I think about those painful experiences and how I'm aware that she has changed and how she views life now, that it's possible that that was a twist or a turn in her
Mm,
journey. And she looked at me for a moment, and then she was sort of, I could see that she's thinking about it. And sometimes I think that sometimes we need to leave people with something to think about. And I try not to always, with some of the people that I see or groups I work with, I try not to fix it, because I know it's challenging. The painful experience is there, and
hmm
while I'm definitely of the belief that every experience is a learning experience, I know that there are very complex experiences that I may not always say that about. Yeah. So because I know of cases, where people had cancer, and then it's like, and I know, I mean, did God give me the cancer so that I can learn a lesson? He
Yeah,
couldn't I have learned a lesson another way? So there's lots of complexity, I think, with us as human beings, um, trying to make sense of our painful experiences and how we learn from it. So,
absolutely.
yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, it's in terms of what you're saying is making me think, because on a scale, is that when we think about it, I mean, your example, somebody's got cancer, and I mean, the thing sometimes not to say when somebody's so emotional about, if they just discovered it and they have to process their situation, um, is really, yeah, to be dealt with a lot of sensitivity. The point of the principle, though, is once the whole cycles of grief that you've gone through, is when you get to that acceptance level, is to be able to say, look, more than just accepting the lot, my lot in life, but it's also now looking for, and you coined the phrase, it's a learning opportunity, which is quite interesting, is looking for that learning at the very least. But I guess some people ask, but why do I have to learn this lesson? And is God punishing me kind of the follow up on that. And it just reminds me when I had my motorbike accident and smashed my right knee into smithereens, basically. People asked me, "What is God trying to teach you?" So it was quite interesting. Immediately, um, that therefore that question then leads you to sometimes think, well, I'm being punished for something. I did something that was not as pleasing. Therefore, I had to be taught a lesson. But I guess the broader context is to see, um, basically that the situation that you're in, whether it's a health situation or a relationship issue or any other thing for that matter that we believe is potentially disastrous, is to step away from, I guess, that part that just absolutely judges it as bad. And I think acceptance kind of leaves that behind and says, look, this is where I find myself. So the learning opportunity, opportunity for growth in this way. So if I can use an example from my motorbike accident, is I didn't dwell on whether or not God was trying to tell me something or teach me something. I literally looked for new ways of doing things. That was my opportunity. Spent a month in a wheelchair, basically. How could I still be a provider for my family? So there were lots of new creative things that were taking place. Suddenly, the way you view your world just from a different vantage point on the flat of my back. I mean, I remember how some of my clients traveled from Pretoria, um, and around the East Rand to literally come pay me a visit at home and say, listen, there's nothing wrong. You broke your leg, but there's nothing wrong with your ability to think. So you tell us what to do and what to write on the flip chart, and we'll still walk away with an action plan regardless. So different vantage point. I'm used to standing in front of a flip chart in those days. I'm talking about quite a few years ago when this happened, and suddenly realizing that my purpose will not be limited by a physical impediment, a physical situation, etc. So you might be saying, well, Jacques, it's not the same thing because your leg healed. No, it took me 4 years to be able to run again. And the incrementality of the changes taught me a valuable lesson, meaning for every week, twice a week, going to a biokineticist and walking and working through small degrees of change taught me patience. But it taught me one thing, is to celebrate small micro um, movements in progress, and to really celebrate it as huge. To be able to run again after 4 years was extremely massive. So um, one of the things well-meaning family or friends were telling me is that, listen, you had this accident and I think you're being told you must stop riding. The truth of the matter is, my bike was not even damaged in the whole debacle. It was not scratched, didn't even have a scratch during that time. So I said, well, and I challenged a ride back. I guess the meaning of today, and this conversation around this is really um, how you choose to see your situation, not judge it, see it. Does it feel good? No, it doesn't. Is it painful? Yeah, of course it is. But how can I grow from this experience? And looking for that opportunity actively through your pain, looking for it is the key. So if one considers gender based violence, Shanaz, and one has to say to somebody who's going through this terrible ordeal that even that experience is an opportunity for growth, what do you think, if I had to say to um, sensitively, of course. I have to say to people, yes, here's your opportunity for growth. How would that be received?
Jacques, thank you for asking. In my experience, what I've actually found is that both women and men were very open, to learning from the experience, and I think that when you handle it in a sensitive way, I think you make people realize that there is something, I think what they start to recognize is the role that they play in the situation, that it involves some choices of their own, and that they can choose differently. um, and I think that that's when it starts to click in them. They suddenly start to become aware that they can choose differently, or that there are other choices, yeah, as I said, to kind of make. But what I actually also want to mention is that in my experience with, so I've been, my research is focused on men. And so from research and from general experience, we see that men have not been included, and men are almost invisible in the fight against gender based violence or preventing gender based violence. So there's been a lot of discussion about how you bring men in. And what I experience with organizations is that it creates conflict, and yet if we totally exclude um, men from discussions and conversations about how to prevent gender-based violence, I think that we do ourselves a disservice. I don't think that we are going to grow, or develop effective prevention patterns or prevention interventions, if we don't include men as well. And so, even for me, when I think about the teams and organizations I've been involved in, that there are times that conflict is necessary sometimes for an organization or a team to grow. If we're agreeing all the time, then I think that a team, and I've experienced that in a team that I've been involved in previously, when we're all agreeing all the time, I find that people stagnate. And so for me, I think that when we don't include men in conversations about gender based violence, that we are only going to be dealing with the symptoms of the problem, and we are not going to be addressing the root cause of the problem. Yeah, that's my 5 cents.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, is the reason for not including men, is it because men are seen to be the perpetrators of all of this, and so you need to deal with the evil as you find it? Except what I'm taking from what you're saying is making men part of the solution, moving forward, reducing GBV as it is. Um, and I do know that even men are also sometimes victims of gender-based violence. In any case, a smaller proportion, but it does exist. Is that correct?
Yes, it is, and so what we've even been finding is that even when a small proportion, some of the men that I've worked with said that they could never go to the police station because the police will laugh at them, and often you find that in altercations between couples, there are sometimes we men are, both are fighting with each other, but because of the huge problem that we have globally and in our country, the emphasis is definitely on that men are the perpetrators. um, my position that I kind of that I'm taking on an article that I'm writing is that men's position, or in we will call it in sociology, we say their positionality can shift from being a victim to to a perpetrator, or I'm using the terms oppressed to oppressor.
Mm.
And we've only been looking at men in one way.
Mm.
So, mm.
No, it's interesting. So that would be part of the whole reframe. So when people, I've heard people say this, and I don't know, we sometimes joke around with things, and even when it's culinary, even if it's about eating, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you fat, doesn't it makes you stronger, all those kinds of things. There is an issue around then the belief, dealing with the belief that no matter what, if I pull through this situation, I will be better. I will grow. The learning, the wisdom, and in fact, that learning is about understanding that the experience has kind of grown me in this way, um, um, and I can apply it differently. I mean, the whole thing about not seeing the opportunity for growth is just not changing anything in your behavior, just doing the same thing in the same way. And I suppose brings us to that place where we all say it's insane because then we're expecting different results. And so no matter what it is, every single moment that puts us or exposes us to a new experience um, needs to be embraced now. The one commonality is that, wow, I don't like that. If you like, I can put a spin on it and say it's like a sense of adventure. I don't quite know what I'm going to find. Sometimes you got to travel a road that has not been um, carved out yet. Maybe you, the person who's going to set the trail for others to follow, but to step through all of that and to just deal with just lastly. And I can see how this can play out in conflict situations in relationships when one party or both parties believe that they're not good enough to resolve anything, or fall into the victim mode of believing that they themselves are to blame, that they've attracted all of these things into their lives. And understanding that each one of us, despite the circumstances that we face, can live a life that is joyful. If every single moment presents us with an opportunity to take further steps to that place that we've set for ourselves, the the energy that we create every day, step by step towards that is, and we've spoken about so many other things, but suddenly realizing that you cannot, none of us live in a vacuum where everything is perfectly in balance. Rather accept that life is very non-discerning. It treats us all in different ways, whether you deserve it or not. So therefore, when it comes, learn, 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 apply, apply, apply. And so we've come to the end of our session today. Shanas, thank you very much for sharing so generously. And others that have joined us, thank you for coming. And as Shanas said earlier on, as planting the seed, go think about it. Ask yourself, how can I grow from this challenging experience? Thank you, everyone. I look forward to chatting again next week. And
Thank you,
Shanaz,
Job.
you make this possible. You do know that it's our sessions are turning into conversations between Jacques and Shanaz.
That's fine. It starts my week off when in a good way. So I'm very grateful for it. Thank you that you are still here. I appreciate it. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's
Have a good week.
mutual. And
Yeah, I think it's mutual. And okay, great.
yes.
Thank you, Jacques.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye for now.